Women are tech's most untapped resource. Not only is creating diverse teams ethical and will drive more economic growth, but future-proofing the job opportunities of women will ensure sustainable communities worldwide. Women in Tech is committed to actively promoting girls' and women's empowerment in STEM. We are present in 6 continents with thousands of members. Our power as a global movement is demonstrated by working magic every day. We create impact through action to build skills and confidence, setting women up for success. Our mission is to empower 5 million women and girls by 2030. Because when women rise, we all rise.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Theophille. I'm the chapter lead, and on behalf of the entire Women in Tech Switzerland team, I would like to welcome you all and really thank you for joining us. We were overwhelmed with the number of registration, really. And even if I'm not standing today in front of you and seeing all of you, actually, I must say I'm a bit nervous, so you might feel it, right? I want to give a special thanks to the dream team behind all this, who made this possible, actually, and that's the Women in Tech team. So in this team, we have Shera, Emily, Bettina, Samantha, Theophille. Goes to them because without this dream team behind, we would not be able to make this happen. So thank you. And all this, I must say, happened during this quite special year we had with the COVID-19. So I'm really glad that despite this year being so challenging, that we made this happen. So very, very, very happy about it. And we do hope that you and your family are all keeping safe in those moments. So I would like to start, and it's really an honor to kick this off. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about myself and my personal story, which brought me to the place I'm in today. So I grew up in a culture where actually I can say it, boys and girls, they don't have really equal rights. They're not treated really with equality. My dad very early on made it clear to me that I wouldn't pursue studies. I was going at school, right? But I wouldn't be planning to go for long studies. But I would rather get married and have a family, have kids. That's how it is in the culture where I'm coming from. And that wasn't what I had in mind. Therefore, when I decided that I would like to really study, and it was the computer science that I had decided to study at that time, there's no need to say that this was almost a drama in my family. So I was the first one to stand up and face my dad to fight for what I wanted to do in my life. During the studies, we were 4 girls out of 30, around 30 students. So even as girls at that time, we had to find our space. I got attracted by technology, not really because I was seeing myself really as this stereotype we all know, the geek in front of his laptop, coding. So it wasn't really who I was at that time, or neither I was a fan of those games, right? The Game Boy, we used to call Game Boy, and you see that even just in the name of the Game Boy, we see the stereotype behind. This is made for boys. But I saw in technology very early an amazing enabler to really create the impact. So through technology. When I got my first child, I found myself in a situation where I had to extend a bit my maternity leave for just another 3 months to feel like I was taking care of my baby. when I went back in the office, I learned that I lost my job. It was a difficult moment, really. I felt somehow that I was paying the price of a choice I had made. And I was just 26 years old at that time. Very difficult moment, I must say. When I got my second child, so you see, it didn't stop me for having other child. I wanted to reduce my work to 80%, just to be able to manage this work-life balance with 2 kids. I remember I was told by a senior leader that this would potentially impact my career aspiration at that time. So I decided to be a bit more creative and ask for a working remote arrangement, just a day per week. This was very unusual. I was the first one to do that in France. And believe me, I was strongly advised to keep it just for me, not to spread the news. So you might wonder now, what has this to do with the women in tech in Switzerland? Well, I came to Switzerland 13 years ago, and along this time, I continue to face similar challenges, if not more difficult. I've been evolving in the different tech leadership role, where I found myself most of the time the only woman, especially in leadership team. I was constantly challenged or reminded on the fact that it was a bit difficult to work full-time with 3 kids. And when I got my third child, I found myself in a situation where my former manager decided that I had to change role because I would not be able to travel anymore with a baby. But I'm just wondering, has anyone checked with me first if that would be an issue? So as Kamala Harris' mom told her once, when I read that, really, I wanted to mention that. So she said, Kamala, you might be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last. And that resonated a lot with me. Today, I'm grateful for the fact that I work in a very innovative area of personalized medicine, where we leverage data, AI, so all technology to change the lives of many patients and accelerate the fight against terrible disease like cancer. But I must say it's moving me when I see more than 20 years after my studies that we are still desperately lacking women in the tech field. My 18-year-old daughter, she's actually turning 18 this Saturday, she found herself the only one in her classroom when she pursued the computer science initiation option at school. The only girl. I could not believe that. We simply can't leave half of the population away from some of the fastest growing and most promising jobs of the future, like in computer science and engineering. Tech is in every job of the future, and therefore it becomes a must to ensure that girls, they embrace it and they create an impact in our future society. So now you know a little bit better my personal take on for standing here today in front of all of you. And it's truly an honor for me to introduce you now to Ayumi Moa-Ayuki, the founder and president of Global Women in Tech. Ayumi and I met 2 years ago in Paris, and her personal story, which took her to where she is today, was a great source of inspiration also for me. She's an entrepreneur and she's a mother of 4 kids. Welcome to you, Ayumi. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Safia. Thank you so much. Very touching story. I remember you told me when we met 2 years ago, and I'm so happy and and proud and joyful that you managed with your team, to be here today to open this beautiful chapter in Switzerland. And I'm very, very happy, and I'm very, very proud of this. So let me just say a few words on how honored I am and happy to be opening this new chapter in Switzerland. I want to say thank you to you, Safia, and to your whole team, for making this possible. Also welcoming our guest speakers that are coming here today, Katrin, Arnold, Elizabeth Theophille, Olivier Bousquet, and Alisée de Tonnac. And I wanted to tell you very quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, a lot about women in tech. So I founded this nonprofit organization 3 years ago. I had no money, I had no partners, I had no support, and I knew no influential people, but I had two things. I had a dream and a purpose. I really wanted to empower women and girls across the world with the skills, the opportunities, and the confidence to succeed in STEM fields. And why is that? Obviously, I could, start over, from my childhood and my lifetime experience. But more than that, I think today, and COVID and all these challenging times have shown us that tech is really the fastest growing and the most lucrative industry in history. And increasingly, however, it's dissolving, it's not becoming more an industry, but becoming the force behind every single industry. In fields such as coding, UX design, analytics, and most exclusively drive innovation, opportunity, and growth in all the spaces, including manufacturing, farming, finance. So without a doubt, technology is really the future of work. So right now, women are underrepresented in technology, and they are risk being left behind. So we must add more women to the technology sector and more diversity altogether to the technology sector if you want them to play an integral role in the ecosystem and obviously strengthen the industry as a whole. So today we are a global movement. We have over 50,000 members across the world. We have 22 official chapters in 6 continents. And we are on this beautiful, crazy, ambitious mission of empowering 5 million women and girls by 2030, meeting 5 of the SDGs. So we want to support women and girls in technology in every stage of their life cycle, right? We want to take them from the classroom all the way to the boardroom. And we do this by taking real action on the ground through 4 main focus areas, which are education, entrepreneurship, social inclusion, and science and innovation. So I invite you all here today to join our movement and to help us move the needle, because I think we all must be active members, not passive members. We have to be active members and, take action together. So do please sign up to our Women in Tech platform. It's all free, because that platform is really the cornerstone of our community. It allows us to create a profile. We can host programs, we can have events, networking activities, job offers, etc. Everything is one space. Because obviously, I believe that we can do phenomenal things alone, but it will never, ever reach the full potential unless we do them together. So this is why we're here today. So thank you so much. I welcome now our new members and new guests, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayumi. Thank you. A pleasure really to have you with us. And now I also have the pleasure to introduce you to our great panel. I'll use a word which my team used, I have to say, right, when they were working with each of you. They told me, Safia, this is a dream panel, and many have worked with many on many events before. So I really, I think it was such an honor. So let me tell you more about the panelists. So I'd like to start with Alisée de Tonnac. Alisée, she's the CEO and co-founder of Seedstars World, a Swiss-based investment holding with a mission to impact people's lives in emerging markets through technology and entrepreneurship. She's the board member of the School of Management of Freiburg and a member of the Swiss National Innovation Council. She was nominated Social Entrepreneur Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Europe's most influential woman in the startup and venture capital space. Alisée has 2 kids, and while being French, she starts to feel almost a Swiss person, enjoying hiking in the beautiful Switzerland. Welcome, Alisée. Moving on to Elisabeth, called Liz Theophille. Liz is the Global Chief Technology Transformation Officer at Novartis, Basel. She joined Novartis actually in November 2016 with an aspiration to change the practice of medicine by leveraging technologies. She highly believes in servant leadership, and she's willing to drive innovation and business growth with clear emphasis on operational excellence, data, and digital. She has a 13-year-old daughter, and she loves exploring the countryside of Switzerland as well. So probably nice things to do, you and Liz, you and Alisée. Welcome, Liz. Now, moving on to Katrin Arnold. Katrin is the site head, Pharma Research and Development at Roche in Basel. Her focus is on maintaining and enhancing the Roche Innovation Center Basel as the world-class and highly engaging research and development environment. Katrin is personally and professionally heavily engaged in supporting science, education, and communication, especially women in science. She served as a board member for the Association of Women in Science and also mentor for the Healthcare of Businesswomen Association. Katrin loves traveling, which obviously is quite challenging these times. And she has a passion for dark chocolate, something we share together, Katrin. Welcome to you. Last but not least, we have Olivier Bousquet, the man in our panel. So I'm really, really happy to have you with us, Olivier. Olivier is the European head of Machine Learning Research Center at Google. In 2004, he joined a startup called Pertinence, where he led a research team and developed machine learning software for predicting manufacturing quality. Olivier joined Google Zurich in 2007 and contributed to many aspects of the search engine, in particular leading an engineering team working on language understanding and knowledge graph. He's a father of 3 girls, and therefore he definitely feels he has a key role to play in shaping the future of society in which his daughter will evolve. So a warm welcome to all of them, and also to my colleague Bettina Bachmann, who will moderate the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Safia, and welcome also from me. Indeed, good afternoon, and I'm Bettina Bachmann, the moderator for your panel today, and very, very honored to welcome our distinguished panel as well. So I'm looking forward to an engaging dialogue, in fact, with all of you. We will run this first as a panel, where I will be asking the question. And meanwhile, you as the audience, you are welcome. You are invited to post your own questions in the chat and QA box. I can tell from the contributions we have already had that we are dealing with a tech-savvy community here. So just continue that or pick it up if you haven't yet. And we'll run the panel in a few rounds, which each of them with a sort of a theme, which I will introduce briefly and then ask my questions. So without further ado, let me go into the first round. Indeed, you will all have heard or noticed that in Switzerland, we celebrate the 50-year anniversary of women's vote in this country. A very special thing that certainly my own mother has experienced. And in this first round, we will be talking a little bit indeed about your career choices, your passions for this tech career, but also about the situation in Switzerland, because we are wondering, is it still special? Are there still things that we have to pay special attention to in this country? So my first question is for you, Katrin. What I would like to ask you is, you're in the healthcare industry. It's an industry that is evolving very, very rapidly. So we would like to hear from you what your challenges are when you're attracting diverse talent in Switzerland, especially, of course, female talent.
Thanks, Bettina. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here and be part of and supporting the start of the Swiss chapter for Women in Tech. Congratulations to the organizers. I think you have attracted a great audience. And to your question, Bettina, you are right. So healthcare industry is evolving rapidly. Technology is evolving rapidly. The interface between science and technology, for example, becomes more and more important. And it's exciting, right? It's exciting times to be at, to live in. And to your question, when it comes to diversity, and I liked in the video, it's women are an untapped source in Switzerland, and I feel this is totally true. And the challenge for us, I think, is maybe two things to point out. So the first one is, I think, society is still very much thinking in boxes. Right, so you go a very straight career path, don't go out of the boxes, and I think one of the challenges to break that, to think more about the interfaces, you know, just to name biology and technology, for example, instead of thinking this is one and this is the other. So this is one. This is independent of gender, but it also includes women, of course. And the second one, like how to find women in tech or at the interfaces in Switzerland, how to reach them, how to attract them, you know, so all of these things are actually still, and I think it's not only for us, but probably also other players in the area, it's very difficult. And I think so far there has not been such a group in Switzerland. So I really believe there is a need for it, and I'm excited to see that you're forming one now.
Thank you very much, Katrin. Interesting to hear indeed that you also look at the situation here as something that needs attention and that we have to become active about. I think we can follow through on Ayumi's advice there. My next question is for Alisée. Alisée, you are also a well-traveled person, we understand, a global citizen and also an entrepreneur. So you must have experienced many different countries and have seen the different challenges in them. So the question would be to you, can you share with us a little bit whether you have encountered any special challenges in Switzerland that you will always remember?
No, what I always say is that I guess I've come from a background where the challenge wasn't set for me, where I realized how much unconscious bias I had and my surrounding was when I became a mother, because I think that's really the moment where the inequalities were loudest in my case. And then you start to rewind every previous year, realizing what was appropriate, what wasn't, what was myself trying to project a more masculine, and I don't know what are the right terms on, because it's not necessarily man woman. I think it's more in the masculinity and the femininity, but I was trying to also be someone that was more aggressive and appropriate for the job market. So I think that these elements have pushed me to realize how much work, first of all, I need to do with myself, and then everything that we want to implement within our company and then within the larger community that Seedstars interacts with. Because I really believe if we can't prove the model ourselves and start experimenting in-house, then it will be very difficult to build momentum and change outside. So there has been huge efforts internally to figure out where are the bottlenecks. And every time we seem to be going up the pipeline, where now we're, even with Seedstars in our activities, we're launching kind of schools of tomorrow, because we're realizing it's, we're not teaching young people how to learn, and coding or technology at large should be kind of as universal as English or languages in general. And so that's something we're trying to push as the kind of the medium you use to learn how to learn.
That's interesting. So you see the coding and indeed the tech careers as hopefully a medium to make these changes last?
Yes, because again, technology is your enabler. So it's, but it has to be a language that you are native enough so that you know how to use it to the advantage of the community, how to use it to amplify citizens everywhere around the world. So I don't think everyone needs to master it and be its specialist, but everyone needs to understand it enough so that they can build on top of it and build unbelievable products and solutions that are going to solve some of our bigger challenges. If we look at the jobs of tomorrow, it's not necessarily focusing on hard skills or just even knowing how to code. There's a big demand and it's continuing to increase, but I'm more interested in seeing a generation of talents that are capable in forever learning, in having the appropriate soft skills to work and thrive in this ever-changing, more so chaotic environment, which is just going to accelerate.
Indeed, yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Alisée. Would like to move on to you, Liz, with my next question. So why did you choose a tech career, and how did you experience it? Did you find equal opportunities all along the way?
Thanks, Bettina, and first and foremost, thank you for inviting me to this event. I feel very honoured as a woman in tech to represent the women that are shy to actually join technology and the women that are in technology. You know, if I think back, I mean, I started taking an interest in technology at a very, very young age. So when I was a teenager, it was around 14, I remember for Christmas, I asked my parents if I could have my first computer. And I remember way back then, it was a Commodore 64. So I suspect some of you out there don't even remember those computers, but I had my first C64. And it was mainly because I have two brothers and a sister, and my brothers love computers as well. So, and me being the youngest, I could learn from them. So I started to code. So not only just playing games in the Commodore 64, but starting to code in assembly language. And I found I had a knack for problem solving and debugging, and I really became so fascinated by it. And in the neighborhood that I lived in, and you know, I grew up in Glasgow in Scotland, in the neighborhood, everyone used to come and ask me to fix, you know, their code or debug or help them. And eventually I actually made some money out of it. So I used it from an entrepreneurial perspective as well. And then from there in school, and I could tell you, I started to notice then, you know, the unconscious bias, even at school, it was always the boys that the teachers focused on in terms of, you know, learning how to code. And, you know, I just continued to be persistent and learn because it started to be a passion for me. And, you know, before leaving school and choosing, you know, what I wanted to have a degree in, I remember I said, I want to do a degree in computer science. And during the career week, when all the universities came to the school, it was incredible, Bettina. All the girls were put in a corner where it was all about nursing and being secretaries and catering and you know, there's nothing wrong with those. They're very, very amicable careers. But all the boys were over in the areas where it was for science and computer science. And I thought, why am I being segregated? So then I walked over to the boys section and listening, and I signed up for computer science. But even at that point, the teachers were telling me, oh, Liz, this might be too hard for you. And maybe you could look at something. I mean, they actually asked me if I wanted to be a technical secretary and translate medical documents, if you like. That's the kind of thing they were at. And I said, no, I want to code. So I pushed, and eventually, I got into university doing computer science. There was only 5 initially at the beginning of 30 students, girls, And in the end, only 2 of us finalized and graduated, which is incredible. But you know, you just have to, you know, you can't give up on your dreams and your passion. But you know, I still think this kind of boys culture to a certain degree still exists in technology, even though it might not be as obvious and transparent. I feel it's still, this boys culture very much so still exists, and we really need to change this culture.
Yeah, a great story, Liz. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll move to my next question, which will be for Olivier. And obviously, it's almost a nice segue to the fact that gender-based role models exist for girls as well as for boys. So maybe the decision was made for you, Olivier, as well, just a bit like for many of the girls in Liz's class. But would be interested what made you choose your tech career, and indeed whether you felt you had equal opportunities all along.
Yeah, thanks, Bettina. And thanks for having me here today. I'm really happy to be part of this panel, and a little bit humbled as well, because, you know, as a member of the majority in tech, I think, you know, I have more to do, let's say, to or I feel that, you know, it's my duty maybe to help women in tech. But yeah, as for my story, I think what's kind of bothering me is that my story is kind of the exact opposite of the stories we have heard so far. I had it very easy. Like from an early age, I was passionate about understanding how things work. I was fascinated by computers, so it was very natural. Like Liz, I got a computer when I was like 11 or 12. I started coding. I was a real geek, and you know, naturally, I did my studies in computer science, and it was all easy. Nobody questioned those choices because it was just natural for me as a boy to be interested in science and computer science. And then naturally, you know, I gravitated towards Google as a company where you can develop technology that has impact on the world. And so throughout this career, what surprised me, or what shocked me even, was that how non-diverse the environment was. It was all boys all over the place. And so I thought, okay, maybe that's the way it is. Maybe I should not question that. Maybe that's, you know, that's people just choose things based on their gender. And but somehow I also encountered, and I was very lucky actually to encounter female mentors. For example, when I did my PhD, I was supervised by a woman. The first company I joined, the CEO was a woman. And throughout my career at Google, I've been working very closely with you know, senior leaders that were women. And from them, I learned a lot. And I realized that their stories were very much like the stories we've heard from Safia and Liz so far, and really not like my story. And so I thought, you know, why is it that it's so easy for me as a boy, as a man? And why is it that every woman that wants to have a similar career needs to fight, needs to go against the flow, needs to have a lot more courage and bravery than we men just need? So I think, you know, really this disturbed me to the point that I think it's on us men to really change things so that it's as easy for women and men to have careers in tech.
Right. Many thanks for sharing that, Olivier. And thank you all for your contributions. You almost feel like we know a lot about you already after this first round. So let's move into round 2. And that's really about obstacles. It may sound like life's easy. You have all achieved a lot in your careers. You're sort of made it, I'm sure. Many of the girls and women in our audience find it awesome what you have achieved and look up to you. But I'm sure you have encountered obstacles as well. So can you tell us something about these obstacles? Can you tell us something about how you have dealt with them and how you face them? Maybe starting with you, Alisée, and look at it again, maybe through the eyes of the entrepreneur.
Yes, I was kind of reading all the questions. There's such an engaged community. It's very cool. I would love to have all the answers of everyone in the audience. On my end, I think again what I was mentioning before, the bigger obstacles that I had was facing the prejudice I was already having towards women. So I was realizing I was, for example, someone that would say in the past, like, man up. That was a typical expression I would use without even seeing the huge like bias there was in that. Or as a leader, many times when I was recruiting, it was so reassuring to have a talent kind of quite aggressive and confident and okay, no worries, give me this, I can do it. And I would tend to go for that talent, but I didn't realize that the reality was that many times it was more male talents because they had this unbelievable privilege from day one. And so they were overconfident and willing to take on anything because it kind of came easy. Whereas my women talent tended to be a bit more insecure or didn't really know what the role would entail. And so a lot of the bigger obstacles, because in the end, I was very lucky to find the right founding team and great people to work with. So I don't feel like I had personally the most difficult obstacle, but it was more me putting obstacles in for women talents to scale. And that's where I had to make huge changes in my lexic, in being very rational and transparent in the whole process of how we source, select, retain, motivate talent. In really asking myself, okay, we're diverse because Seedstars, we were lucky by our mission that we have hundreds of people from around the world. So we were really playing that card of diversity. We're 50-50 in terms of women and men, but inclusion was a whole other ballgame. And that's where we had to put a lot of our efforts reflecting on, are we really inclusive in the diversity of our talents, may it be gender, personality, nationality, cultural background? And I think that's the biggest mistake you do is you hire what you know. And if leadership is still very much male driven, then you have that skew. I was skewed in my way. I hired what I know, and all my direct kind of team members were women. But because it was, I had also built that confidence. So yeah, so for us, it's really been breaking down the biases internally and then seeing how we can disseminate these best practices and build best practices that are cheap enough, because everyone sees it as a very sees it as a huge cost to invest in, which really bothers me. And so we're just trying to showcase with our experiments and how we operate that it's kind of it's a very smart long-term strategy, and here is how you could do it. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Moving on to you, Olivier. What would you describe as obstacles that you've had? I mean, you said before it was easy, but I'm sure it wasn't always easy for you either.
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, it was easy from the point of view of, as a member of the majority group in tech. I did not encounter obstacles that were due to my gender or ethnicity. But I think the biggest challenge I faced maybe was that, for me, I did not realize early enough, I think, the value of diversity. And I initially thought, as I said before, right, that gender balance in this field was a fatality. And, the only option I had was to just work with people like me. And I did make this mistake multiple times to look for talents that were more like me. And I think this certainly limited my capacity, and especially like in an environment where innovation is key, this definitely limited the ability to forge teams that were really innovative and creative. And one key lesson that I've learned through these years is that one mistake that we often made, especially in this very scientific or quantitative field of computer science, is that we think that performance should be measured with indicators that are that are quantitative. Like very often we think, oh well, how much this person has produced in terms of lines of code or technical contributions, and we often we focus our evaluation of performance on these very crisply measurable indicators, and we underestimate the value that people bring into a team, because it's not just like individual contribution that matter. For a team to be successful, you need a lot of maybe intangible contributions, like people that help others, that act to change the culture of the team, or that improve the productivity through indirect means. This is really changing the way a team can deliver on especially in an innovative environment. And so I think the challenge was like, how can we measure what value every individual of the team brings to the team, and without using this like cold strict indicators of lines of code or whatever. And I think making that shift is really important in order to really realize the value of having diverse teams.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. Moving to you, Katrin, any obstacles you have encountered that you would like to share with us, or learnings in particular?
Sure, happy to. I actually, when I think like obstacles, I think I had a lot of challenges. I wouldn't call them obstacles, so just challenges to tackle, I would say. But maybe that depends a bit on the perspective and the definition of it. And I was smiling in a few minutes ago when Liz and Olivier both said like, they got a computer from their parents, because I also got it from my mom, with a little bit the expectation that I would study informatics. So I think my first challenge was actually to convince her I want to study biology, and I was successful. So that was good. But of course, like it's not, if I listen to Safia's story, it's completely different, right? It's just, mine was a bit about being stubborn and still going what I wanted to do. But throughout my career, I think the biggest obstacle for me, or challenge really was, so I don't fit in a box. And I think humans tend to think in boxes, right? And try to put other people in boxes. And what do I mean with that? So I studied biology, but I also worked in HR for R&D, and now I work in operations for R&D. And so I had to like again and again explain people, because people were always like, oh, so that's not normal. Like, why, why for me it's a natural development. And so I had to really like explain and position like again and again. And everybody who did these shifts, I think, knows like it's not easy. But to your question, like what helped me, and it's also something that Olivier mentioned already, I always had a very good network and very strong mentors. So they helped me with information, they helped me to understand, so how does the organization tick, what to do, when you want a different role, or when you start in a different role. They build connections for me, so really, really valuable. And sometimes it was just really nice to speak somebody who understands that you don't fit in a box, right? And sometimes it's really just finding somebody who supports you and just confirming, it's okay that to do. And so that's something that I would really recommend everybody who doesn't have it yet, like get a mentor.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. Over to you, Liz. Have you got any more obstacles in addition to your classroom situation that you can share with us?
Yeah, of course. The two biggest obstacles for me, first and foremost, being a woman of color was not so easy in the past. Okay, because even that came with its their biases. So being a woman of color was very unusual for when I was growing up in this field. The second thing was around being considered for certain positions and finding that a colleague or a peer that you're working with was excelling and being promoted quicker than myself. But me knowing that I had the skills, the capability, the experience, you know, the ability to collaborate and the ability to be transparent, you know, it really took a toll on me for some years in my career. And how that sometimes manifested itself, which I believe still exists, but it's getting better, is around equal pay and benefits, which is a very large topic in many companies. And still there is some challenges there. So my biggest obstacles, you know, around doing the same role, or even a role that there was more responsibility, a bigger impact, you know, a bigger outcome for the company, in discovering that your male colleague or your peer was on much more benefits, a bigger salary. We say, well, why is that?
Just overtaking.
That shouldn't be the case. You know, and you know, those were the two things that I always found very bizarre. And I can tell you, in my younger days in my career, the way I addressed that problem was I got so frustrated that I ended up moving on. Which, when I reflect back now, where I am today, whilst I learned a lot from moving on, I do believe that wasn't the right way. That wasn't the right way to solve the problem, because then I was kind of walking away from the problem instead of speaking up and challenging. But there wasn't the mechanisms that we see today in you know, in companies, you know, years ago. There wasn't that mechanism, and I'm proud to say where I work today, you know, equal pay, you know, all these things are very much at the forefront of the discussions at the leadership table. So you know, we need to be very mindful of those things, because it's not about even fairness. I mean, it's just the right thing to do. Yeah. And we have to do the right thing so that women feel engaged and want to come to the workplace and want to do these roles, as long as they're treated fairly. And it's the same on the opposite side. I mean, I admire Olivier for joining today, but you know, paternity leave for men is so important as well, right? Because that's why equality is important, right? So women get maternity leave, men should get paternity leave as well. And so this equality thing is so important. And you know, I only wish that more companies take this topic seriously.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think parenting is such an obvious thing that men and women share, and so why should there be really such different rules for everybody? Thank you very much. What I take away from it is also that the challenges, the obstacles are as different and as varied as the person who encounters it. Yeah, it's been really fascinating to listen to you. Thank you. So next round is about empowerment. Obviously, that's a key thing that you all share. You are leaders. It is your role, and I think it is your passion as well, to empower others to take their fate into their own hands and step up and have confidence in themselves. So I would like to start with you, Olivier. I think for all of us and your audience, it's of course most interesting to hear from you what you think men can contribute to this topic. Because quite frankly, I've also often been asked by male colleagues, so what do you want me to do? How can I help? And sometimes I was at a loss, I have to confess. So really, really curious to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, no, I think this is an important point, and I guess you know, I would almost say that the fact that we are here today, and you know, this is Women in Tech, and this is driven by women, it feels like or like this could give the impression that it's up to the women to solve the problem and to solve their problem, while it's actually not the case at all. And it's up to men to help and to change the culture, because this culture that we have in our society is largely driven by male, and there is no reason why it is the case. It's just historic, and so, you know, men really have to take a very active role in changing that culture. And I think the one thing that I would say is it's not enough. Like we often say that it's not enough to just acknowledge the problem and to say, okay, I will try and not be biased, and I will, you know, be mindful of say women in my team. I think it's not sufficient. Like if you're not taking a very active role in changing the culture, in supporting women, in you know, mentoring, in being a champion, an ally, then you're actually part of the problem. And that's the first thing that men have to realize, that it's not enough just to say, oh, no, but, you know, I'm just fine. I'm never will consider a man above a woman or whatever, right? Like the passiveness is not sufficient. And so I think that's the first thing, like realizing that we as men, we have a critical role to play in changing that culture in a very active manner. The second thing is that as a result, we should overcorrect, right? And, you know, if you have people in your team, then my recommendation is always like pay attention to the minorities in your team, like people that have maybe a different background, different gender, different ethnicity, different something, because they are the one that first need a lot of help because they may not have the same network. We were talking about network before, and so it's on you to help them create that network. And it's also on you to overcorrect, because maybe because they come from a different background, you can't just have the same expectations for everyone in your team. You have to understand that because they come from a different background, they may not have had the same opportunities. For them, it was very hard to do things that for others were very easy. We've heard lots of stories, and like everyone has those stories that, you know, maybe they were in a country or in a place or in a culture where just to get to the point where they can do the same thing as people would in other cultures would do, would reach, it took a lot more effort. And so as a result, your expectation should be adjusted. And so that's the second thing, like overcorrecting by taking into account the background and the history of people. And maybe the last thing I would say is, you know, be role models, not in the wrong way, because I see that, you know, sometimes women that are successful in companies tend to model their behavior on men. And that's like, you know, some are very poor advocates of gender diversity as a result, because they try to be like men in the wrong way, in a sense. And so I think we have to be like, men have to be role models in the sense of showing a behavior that is a lot more inclusive. And also it comes with inspiration. I think, you know, like maybe I'll go quickly to the story of my kids. I have 3 daughters, and I have always tried to get them interested in science and technology and show them like the potential that this has, without, you know, making it like, you know, making it interesting, making it captivating. And I mean, so far I haven't succeeded, unfortunately. But I think, you know, we should keep trying. I'm always happy to tell children about what I'm doing, and like whether it's girls or boys, I always try to get them excited, because I think it's by sharing that passion that we have for technology that we can help people realize their own passion.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that that is an extremely impressive testimony that you are indeed committed in various ways, and that at every level to change the culture and to contribute to the transformation that we are all looking for. Moving to you, Liz, and I'd like to hear a little bit from you whether you think the challenges that women are going to face in the next 1 to 2 years are going to change, And also maybe a little bit from here to hear from you about resilience. I think we often say that that's also a real virtue, that women have to be sometimes a little bit more resilient when they face the tough challenges and not shy away from it too quickly. I think you have set many examples on that.
Yeah, sure. You know, interestingly enough, I mean, the situation that we're all in today across the world with the COVID situation, I don't think that's really helped, right? I mean, I'm fortunate enough that my husband is extremely hands-on, so we share everything at home 50-50. Sometimes he does even more than I do because of the fact that in the past I travel a lot. So I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to the family unit that I have. But yeah, I mean, I suspect in most households, the COVID situation, everyone at home, it's really prevented, you know, women to think about their careers and the future of their careers. And I think that, you know, those are things that we should also reflect in. But I actually am quite optimistic. I'm going to remain optimistic because, first of all, I'm an optimistic person, and I've been able to be resilient, right? Because I think optimism, resiliency and optimism, when you bring the two of them together, it's really a recipe for success, right? So I think we need to be optimists in this area. And, you know, like Olivier said, we need to educate as well, that, you know, from the youngest age of our children, we need to educate as well that, you know, it's just not normal to, you know, assign genders to roles and things you do. It's not normal to tell your children that if you're a boy, you will excel in this area. If you're a girl, I mean, that's just not normal behavior. And we have to encourage a different culture at home, but also in school and the like. Yeah. But, you know, my view is, do not give up on your dreams. Just don't do it. If your dream is to become, you know, an AI specialist or an engineer, you know, or if you want to do data science, or you want to build platforms, those type of things, which I love doing, yet I still code at home just to keep my skills up and keep up with my team. You know, don't give up in your dreams, because if we give up, we're just going backwards. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So that's what builds resilience from my perspective.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to you, Alisée. We understand that there are studies that really show that gender diversity can provide the solution to quite a few problems that our societies have nowadays. What do you think to this statement?
Yeah, it's completely true, and I think again, it's gender and it's diversity at large, especially in today's world, which is still very much globalized. If you want to understand your citizen, your consumer, your child, diversity will always take a bigger role, and so it has to be coherent in how you structure your business, how you structure your plans and your opinion. But there's so much to say, and there's so many interesting inputs from everyone, and I think we have to also be very concrete. At a country level, there's enough studies that show that indeed, if the father is more involved at home, then the mother can also ambition to a larger plan for herself, and we can see very direct positive outcomes if there's real paternity leave, if there are nurseries, so early childhood development, which is taken care of and not something that only families have to take on themselves. We see it also with taxes in Switzerland. If you're married, it's accumulated, and that automatically brings in a conversation within the family where the mother many times already has that started a setback in her career, becomes kind of the perfect reason to set back. So I think there are very concrete measures that have to be done. There's always, as we were saying, role models, and And so and these stories, I mean, I'm just inspired by everyone else, so it gives me enough motivation for my next months. And so that, I think, is so important for everyone. And at least at Seedstars level, as I was mentioning before, we've been pushing for, okay, we've got diversity to a certain extent. What does inclusion mean? How do you really fulfill everyone's potential? Don't standardize. I think we're at the end of standardization of fulfilling potential of our talents. I think there needs to be a reflection of recustomization of what's the appropriate collaboration between you and me, and no longer here's kind of our HR policy, here's kind of our employee policy, and you go with that. Just before this talk, I was convincing a mother who had to come in and accept a reduced salary, and she wanted to propose, look, I would like to have my Wednesdays off, so to be with my children, so can I take a 90%? And I was like, change the narrative. You are not how many input hours you produce, unless you do a 9-to-5 job where you need to be behind a desk to serve. Your performance is not based on your input hours. So you say you take that 100% because you can deliver on 100%, but my conditions are, if you want me to perform, don't call me on Wednesday afternoons. Knowing that, yes, we will be flexible. Yes, it's a partnership, so we'll have to figure out ways. And yes, there are days where you need to double down on hours. But I think we women really have to change the narrative of how we enter these conversations. And I know it's difficult because all our life we kind of build this imposter syndrome of feeling like we're asking too much. But if we start showing that it has nothing to do with the fact I'm a mom, because my husband who's working and getting the 100%, he's a dad at home, or whatever the family combination that we have decided. So I think that's really important. I always say that my biggest feminist act was to choose the right partner. I think that's fundamental. If you don't have that at home, then because you see all the negative or positive ripple effects that go on to the children and so the next generation. And it's not a taboo. It comes into the very concrete conversation of, okay, I have decided to take care more of family. It's a conscious decision. In 6 months' time, we sit again and I'll tell you if I'm still okay with that plan. And then we think about how I can jump back in my career or not, or whatever. But I feel like too many people have anticipated this kind of, and it's such a good reason to stop for your children. They're the best reasons in the world. So I'm not saying that it's an easy decision, but life is long. If we're lucky, we have a prosperous, healthy life. Your identity is so fundamental in the conversation. So all these big things that I think we can start being very concrete. It's not this abstract conversation, and they're very clear evidence proving the benefits. And again, I'm saying this for all minorities.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful the way you express that. So last person in this round is Katrin. I think we're really keen to hear from you. What are you doing, indeed, being concrete, being specific? What are you doing to encourage more women, more girls to embrace a career in science or technology in some sort or another?
Yeah, it's actually a really fascinating topic, and definitely I think, as everybody else on the panel, at least I do have a passion about it. And you can actually do this in many ways, and I have been doing it throughout at least the last 15 years, I would say. And in very concrete terms, it's like you can mentor somebody, right? So I do always mentor somebody. I think one key thing that I observed in my current role is very often speaker panels are male heavy. And male dominated. And sometimes people ask me in my role now to sponsor these events, and I decline, and I tell them why I decline, right? So, and you can also say, if you're invited to speak somewhere and you notice that there's only men, challenge back. I do this all the time, and I have to say it works pretty well. And most of the time it's not bad intention, it's just people don't realize, right? So those you can do. often when I think like, oh, there's a speaking possibility, I actually approach women directly. And often direction is like, oh, I cannot do this, you know, oh, do you really think? Of course you can, right? So I really encourage like, look, you have nothing to lose. I mean, try, right? Try it, and it definitely is a good experience, because what I really like, I think the driver behind is really to say, I think women need to see role models. I think Safia mentioned that at the very beginning, because it's not the standard, right? So this the standard, or the more the traditional way, is still seeing men in leadership positions in many areas, and very inspiring, I think, is when you see female role models, you know, where you can relate to, like that inspire you, where you see, you know, you can connect. So I think that's very important, and that's what's driving me and most of the things I actively do.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you all for these fascinating contributions. I'm sure our audience has listened and picked up many tips, many ideas. And judging from the little bit I was monitoring on the chat as well, I think many feel reassured and feel a little bit less lonely after your open sharing of your own stories and experiences and the advice you have given. Now, indeed, in view of time, I think we would be quite keen to also look at some of the questions that come out of the audience. So I will hand over to Safia at this stage, and will indeed have to continue the dialogue with the direct audience questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bettina. Perfect, really. So that was so interesting to hear all of you indeed, and I'm amazed by the interaction in the Q&A and the chat indeed. So people are really reacting a lot, asking questions and making comments on all what you have shared so far from your experiences. So thank you so much. We have about 10-15 minutes, let's say, to go through some questions. So I've tried to look into that, and with the team we help to put some questions, and hopefully like one for each of you. We have to go fast so that we have a chance to ask at least some of those. So I'd like to ask maybe a first question to you, perhaps, Katrin. I know pharma, you know, moving more and more. We talk a lot about health tech, and you know how technology is now coming more and more as a I would say an imperative, and we need to definitely attract more and more women. So one question which we got in the Q&A, very practical. What would you advise to the women who are evolving in male-dominated environments, such as engineering, science, to progress in the leading position? Because somehow we have many coming and joining the different roles, but then how could they really progress in more leadership roles?
It's a complex question, I think, because there are really many different advices I could give. Probably depends on the situation. But let me come back to this mentoring topic. And actually somebody in the questions also asked like how to go about it. So maybe to Safia later, a question to you if this is planned as part of the Women in Tech initiative to build a mentoring circle. But really to stress the huge use of mentors and the value it brings, and the information it gives you, the connections it gives you, just like to sometimes just sanity check, you know, like you observe certain situations, you don't know how to go about it, how does it work in your company, or how does it work to enter a company, is really important, I find, and mentors can really greatly help there. So maybe that is just one key advice.
Good, mentorship, nice. Yes, and we can definitely follow up on how actually we can take some action there as part of Women in Tech. We'd love that. Thank you, Katrin. Moving on to an important pillar, as Ayumi mentioned, the 4 pillars we really want to tackle as part of Women in Tech. One is entrepreneurship, and I think with you, Alisée, we have an amazing role model, and I'd like to use that opportunity to ask you now, for Switzerland, since this is really a key focus, how do you think we could support women's entrepreneur within Switzerland, based on how much you've seen so far in the country?
Yeah, I think that's what we were saying earlier. It's kind of where you get lucky, because entrepreneurship, and by that I mean it's probably someone that wants to set out on something that is in which they're very passionate about, and they've understand the stakes that goes with entrepreneurship, because it's a very, very long road and lonely road if you're a solo founder. For me, then gender becomes passion becomes a gender neutralizing force. You really see it. And for most women founders I meet, it's one of the many, many obstacles they have, but it's never been the limitation to why they are not launching their business. It's a very open ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I haven't encountered through the accelerator programs, the mentors, a kind of a strong bias, and there are probably many unconscious wise, but it has nothing to do with the corporate world, where there are these very rigid, sometimes implications which limit a gender. So I think in the contrary, go ahead. We understand now through all the diverse comments that mentorship is super important. So finding a mentor in a genuine relationship, not, oh, could you just be my mentor? It usually doesn't fit in. It has to be a reciprocate relationship. It has to go both ways. And that's where I've seen that the most valuable relationships being built for both parties. And then maybe where we've seen that there is a stronger bias, especially on the investment side. It's true that just recently we were speaking with Nigerian entrepreneurs. They were telling me that the best advice she got was speak like a man during the pitches. So that's where we stand, is that in kind of the entrepreneurial startup world, it's a very aggressive demo day, pitch on stage, be aggressive in your valuations, your market potential, which is not necessarily something that is in tune with many women. So here I would advise to be very strict in your due diligence of the investors you're tackling and trying to get one-on-ones, because it's a very different story. And for those that are in femtech, so you're selling women products, or you want to launch yourself in women-related products, here there's a huge bias, because investment is still hugely dominated by men. They don't understand your product. So many times they won't see the potential. But there's a lot of efforts being done, even though there's a huge gap still. But here, yes, I think you can start encountering more difficulties. But there, I mean, this network, this community, and many others are real, exist, have value, and can support you.
Great. Thank you, Alisée. Thank you very much. Moving on to you, Olivier. You work in an area which, for me, of course, getting quite close and very familiar. And I must say, with the team I work with, the data scientists, fortunately, we have one woman, but we are surrounded with a lot of men. And we know how this area is growing. So in your role in Google, I'm wondering, what are some of the specific action you and your company are doing to attract more women in those domains, like artificial intelligence, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had a silver bullet to really make a change. Because the thing is, computer science is already largely male-dominated. Now, if you move to artificial intelligence, it's even worse. If you move to machine learning, which is a subdomain of artificial intelligence, it's even worse. And the area of machine learning in which I'm working, which is fundamental aspects of machine learning, is even worse. So I think I kind of made my challenge even harder by gravitating towards the field that are, in terms of gender diversity, the worst. And so that's why there is a lot to be done. Now, in terms of what we do concretely, I think to be honest, and I want to be very, transparent and humble here today, because I think we've not succeeded. We as a company, Google as a company, myself as a leader, and so I think reflecting back on all the things that we've tried over the years and looking at the situation, we have to acknowledge that we failed. We started with a lot of different initiatives, reaching out to universities or even like high school, and we have lots of initiatives. We support lots of initiatives in terms of Girls Who Code, or like organizations that try to promote the attractiveness of these domains towards girls or women, but this did not really change the landscape. And so I'm almost at a point where I'm thinking, there are essentially two problems. One is indeed attracting women into this field, and the other one is retaining them, because of course if you attract women but then they end up in an environment where they don't feel welcomed, they don't feel included, then they won't stay, right? And so it starts with fixing the culture. So we have a lot of effort in terms of fixing the culture, which starts with educating, of course, the men in the domain, so that they're realizing that there is this problem. The second is like having a zero tolerance policy in terms of behaviors that we observe, and this is all to create an environment where women or minorities would feel welcome. Now, in terms of really attracting women, I think we have to deal with the markets that we have, right? Like in such a field where there are very few women, it's very hard to even connect with them. So we are kind of building networks, and we are doing a lot of work to identify all the minority talent that exists in the domain. And I mean, just to give you an example of something concrete that I'm quite proud of working on, which is I'm leading a team that is based in Accra in Ghana, and this is the first AI, like one of the first, let's say, AI research team in the continent, and we're trying to develop that team because we feel that being there in that location not only allows us to attract people from the region, but also identify the talents that exist and the diverse talent that exists in this region, which maybe we have been ignoring until now. And so I saw that in the chat there were a question like, should we have quotas? And I think this is a very thorny question and very tricky, and there are all sorts of aspects to it. But I think what we need to do is to make sure that, and that's what one policy that we have in place at Google is that whenever we want to recruit someone, we make sure that we consider a very diverse set of candidates before making a decision. Like one of the mistakes that we have made in the past was to do what we call opportunistic hiring, right? Like someone shows up on your doorstep that has the right expertise, you say, oh great, let's hire that person. That's actually a mistake, and the opposite is to constitute a very diverse panel of candidates and not even make a decision before you are sure that you have reached out to enough diverse candidates, and then make the decision with like we make hiring decision with a committee at Google. And so what we have is also a diverse committee, like the people that will make the decision have to be representative of the diversity so that they make the right decision, and they understand that the judgment of like the decision on hiring is not based on the individual skills, but the combination of skills and what that person would bring to the team. And so this notion of what this person would bring to the team naturally leads you to consider the diversity that they could bring. So these are a number of things that we're doing. But again, I want to be clear that we are far from having solved the problem.
Yeah, sure, Olivier. Thank you. No, I'm mindful indeed. This is a difficult one, and that's why we want to steer everyone's ideas and best practice and see now how we move the needle, right? So thanks for sharing some of the actions you're driving and you're working on. And that comes to nicely comes to the next question. Actually, I have for Lise. You know, I'm aware of the great effort companies like Novartis, like Roche, probably like Google as well, are driving from cultural transformation. Because I think most of you said it also nicely in the panel. It's at the end, really, it comes back to the culture. And I'm wondering, how do you think those efforts we're driving in big companies can also influence the cultural change in Switzerland? Because I'm often told by people working in Switzerland, not in those big corporate organizations, that it's a bit different. That, oh no, Safia, you don't know because you work in those big companies, but you don't know how it is in smaller business in Switzerland or in this country. You don't know how it is. Any thoughts, Lise, on how could we actually influence actually the cultural change within this country?
Yeah, you know, it's really incredible because when we think about change and we think about, you know, a cultural transformation, the first thing most people say is, well, it's the company's responsibility to make that happen, you know, and in reality, transformation begins with yourself, right? It's an individual responsibility more than it is a company responsibility. And I must admit myself, personally, I've taken it upon myself really to focus on embracing the change that is required, you know, to hire the right skills, the right talent, but also to really make sure that I'm self-aware, because it does, again, it's about your individual. So you really need to be self-aware about your own biases, right? Because these are things that are just, they end up just being part of you because it just happens around your environment. It's the way you grew up. So everyone has to take accountability. Do not leave it to the company to try and drive a cultural change. Be self-aware, take individual accountability and say, what is my part in this? What am I going to do differently to actually help the change? And that's where, especially as leaders, we have to be extremely developmental in our thinking. We have to, you know, we have to show vulnerability. This is one of the things we don't teach our children. We say, don't cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay. So, you know, we need to teach vulnerability. We need to teach people that it's okay to show empathy in the workplace. It's okay to be curious and ask questions. Even if you think they're the dumbest questions in the world, it's okay to do that. And when we have that openness and that level of transparency, and you start to show vulnerability, then only the cultural change can begin.
Absolutely, Liz. Yes, I like what you said. Like, it starts with individual. So each of us first. I agree, indeed. Thank you so much. So time is running, and I'd like to perhaps ask each of you for the closing to give us maybe one or two words. Difficult with my question for sure, but it's nice to look forward, right? And think, okay, now we just kicked off Women in Tech Switzerland, and we help there, even though it starts with the individual. How can we actually support that moving forward? So I'm just going in round and with each of you giving me maybe one thing which you think we could do actually moving forward as part of the Women in Tech Switzerland effort. Anyone wants to start? Just one idea you have, or one suggestion.
Maybe I can start. Yeah. So just like what I said earlier, I think because some people really also ask already, like how to find a mentor, you know, and I also saw comments about sponsors, just to have something very concrete as part of the network, and maybe a mentoring circle, just as a starting point.
Perfect, love it. Very, very specific, nice. Thank you, Katrin. Any other suggestions? Next.
You know, I
Yeah,
would.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, Olivier.
No,
Men
please,
first.
please go ahead.
I like it.
Instead of ladies first, men first.
Okay, let's make that exception. No, following up on what Katrin said, I think indeed, like engaging more men and especially as mentors would be a good thing, and leveraging the network of not only women but also men to try and identify men that could come and play the role of mentors or sponsors or allies in that space.
Love it. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you.
And I compliment what Olivier said and also Katrin about sponsorship and mentoring, but there's something else more fundamental for me that is don't be afraid to try. I still think there's a little bit of lack of confidence, in women. When Olivier talked about, AI and machine learning, there is a little bit of lack of confidence there. And my advice is believe in yourself, give it a try. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I think for me that's also something where maybe the community can help in showcasing these more personal stories that prove that it's if you really are aligned with who you are as a person, who you want to become, then these obstacles become a nuisance. They don't become your limitation. And I'm a bit idealist, and there are many specificities and situations which are much more complicated and even more violent. But I think it's really important to build that confidence, and then that will be the loudest multiplier effect. So showcasing these stories, providing as many examples of the nuance of how you can present yourself to the world, can maybe help women be more affirmative in what they want.
Absolutely, I love that. And I think with all of you in the panel having such a diverse background profiles, I think it really resonates indeed. So I hope all the audience today really could get some inspiration indeed. And thank you for giving us some of the specific action we can take. I think time flies. We're reaching the end of the event. So I have to close in 1 minute, but I'd like to really first thank you, all of you. Thanks to the participants. Thanks to our amazing panel. And thanks to the team behind for making this happen. So we are sharing a small survey. The link I think should come now on the chat for all of you. It's great to get feedback, so please go. It should take 2 seconds or 2 minutes, actually, perhaps not 2 seconds, but go ahead and give us your feedback. This is very important because we are shaping now the work around women in tech Switzerland, and we'd love to have your feedback. So thank you. I hope now you all see the context from which we are kicking off this work with the team. You learn a lot about this. We know with the limited numbers of the women in decision-making roles and management level, especially in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, what we call the STEM jobs, there's clearly now a danger that the gender gap will only widen, right, more and more if we don't do anything. And this would be clearly a waste of human potential. The talent that is lost to our profession could really have an implication in the future. That's really important to keep that in mind. And how many actually female innovators are not making it to the influential position from where they could help make the world a better place? That's really a society thing. And gender equality, sometimes we think it's a problem we have to solve, but actually we should rather think gender diversity as a solution to some of the biggest society problem. And that's why we call this event looking for opportunities and not solving a challenge. And I think together we can really make this happen, create a better society, starting with Switzerland maybe. And it takes every one of us, as most of you and Olivier, you reminded, it's gonna be all of us, both men, women, and it's not gonna be a women's party for sure. So I think it's important to highlight that. We want especially to accelerate women in area like technology. So I invite each of you to join the movement, to be with us, to really create an impact. So you should see now all the links and the platform, the website, the LinkedIn page. Join us. Come back to us with any support you want to provide, any idea you might have, because we need all of you. We need really a lot of creativity there to tackle this. So stay tuned and feel free to reach out to us. And I think I would like again to thank you, everyone, and more important, stay safe. Take care of yourself and your family. With this, I'm glad to now close the event for today. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.